All right, welcome to Hoops Tonight here at The Volume. Happy Friday, everybody. Hope all of you guys have had a great week. It is Mailbag Day. All sorts of interesting questions from both conferences. We're going to be jumping all around the league today. Very, very excited. You guys know the drill. Before we get started, subscribe to the Hoops Tonight YouTube channel so you don't miss any more of our videos. Follow me on Twitter at _JasonLT so you guys don't miss show announcements. Don't forget about our podcast feed, wherever you get your podcasts under Hoops Tonight. It's also super helpful if you leave a rating and review on that front. Jackson's doing incredible work on our social media feeds on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Make sure you guys follow us over there. And then last but not least, if you want to get questions into these mailbags, drop them in our full episodes on YouTube in the comments. Put mailbag with a colon. That's how I can find them in the mix. We will get to them in our weekly mailbags throughout the remainder of the season. All right, let's talk some basketball. First question. Is attaching draft capital and a couple of players along with Kuminga to get a wing player, say Keegan Murray, something that the Warriors have any chance of doing? I think a consolidation trade like this is the best thing that can be done by the Warriors to give Steph, Jimmy, and the crew a 2-year solid window to try and win one. So this is an interesting debate, right? Because regardless of what you're able to give out, it really it's really determined by what's available. Like, is there a high-level player available? If so, then yeah, you're going to probably want to attach draft compensation. If it's a mid-tier level available, then you're probably going to be able to do some sort of direct swap. If it's a lower-tier player available, well, one that fits what you're trying to do more, you can get something back, right? Like that was the Malik Monk package, right? Like we're sending out Kuminga, we're getting back Malik Monk, and we're also getting a protected first-round pick, a draft asset that we can use in the future. That's going to shift based on the type of player that you're going at. To me, the better conversation to have is geared around what type of player are you looking for? Are you looking for a high-level athlete that can just do a bunch of role player things? Are you looking for a guy who can score the basketball? And this has been a philosophical debate that I've had with Warriors fans a lot over the course of the summer. I had a long version of this debate with Tommy and Sam, the guys from Light Years, last week in a video that you can find on their YouTube channel. But to me, it's like the way that they kind of framed it, the way that Sam framed it, which I really liked, is like, what does this team need more? 2022 Andrew Wiggins or 2022 Jordan Poole? And I lean more towards the 2022 Jordan Poole side of it than I lean towards the Andrew Wiggins side. And the main reason why is that between Moses Moody and Jimmy Butler, I think you get enough athletic front court kind of like playmaking, rebounding talent from those two guys to kind of roughly approximate what Andrew Wiggins did. And Jimmy, in a lot of ways, can do some things that even Andrew could never do, right? So, like, to me, when I go back and I look at previous iterations of the Warriors that won the title, I we did a rewatch of Game 4 of the finals in 2022, and there's a stretch where Steph comes off the floor and Jordan Poole just comes in and starts getting buckets, getting to his spots and taking and making pretty tough shots because he's a supremely gifted offensive player. He did it again in Game 6. It was a big part of what they did in that postseason run, was having a guy that could really carry the offense for stretches when Steph was off the floor. You go back to 2017 and 2018, that was Kevin Durant. You go back to 2015, it was kind of a combo of young Klay Thompson as well as guys like Sean Livingston and Leandro Barbosa. Sean could go get a bucket on the block, turning over his right or left shoulder. Leandro Barbosa could toast dudes off the dribble and get into the lane and make things happen. They had high-level offensive talent off of Steph that could carry units when he was off the floor. And there were even spots where the two of them would share the floor and have success together, right? So what I looked at, the way I look at it is do I think Brandon Pajemski can approximate what Jordan Poole did in the 2022 championship run? I don't think he can. Do I think Jimmy Butler and Moses Moody can approximate what Andrew Wiggins did? Yeah. And Jimmy can also apply some high-level half-court offense that even Andrew Wiggins could never apply. And so, I'm not saying it has to be Malik Monk, but that's why I was a fan of that deal when we were originally talking about it. To me, Malik Monk, by the way, one playoff series against the Warriors. He averaged 19 points per game on damn near 60% true shooting. You want to know why? because he's an apex athlete with some real wiggle in his game, and he could beat his man off the dribble and make things happen, as well as hit tough jump shots when he needed to, kind of create offense for himself when things broke down. And so what I was looking at that situation and thinking was like, you can turn Johnathan Kuminga into a player that fits a very specific role, the Jordan Poole role, as like the kind of microwave scoring guard off the bench, and you get a draft asset back in that protected first round pick. Now, you would have had to give up Buddy Hield in that deal, but to me, Monk would have slid directly into that Buddy Hield role. But from what I understand with the way that it works, if you wait until the deadline, you don't have to include a guy like Buddy Hield or Moses Moody. So, like, let's shift gears now towards the deadline, as we know that the Warriors are now looking towards waiting until later into the season to make this move. If you can turn Kuminga directly into a guy like Malik Monk, I think that that's a real asset. I think that that's the type of deal. If you can get Monk and a first round pick back that you can use for the future or to further bolster the team, that fits into that mold of that like microwave scorer that could come in and provide offense when Steph's off the floor. Now, to further kind of encapsulate this idea, it all depends on what's available. If a two-way wing is what's available and there isn't really a bucket getter that's available, you take the two-way wing. But it's also possible that the two-way wing is not available and there is a bucket getter that is available. I'm just saying, like, if I look at that roster, I want like a really good athlete that can get separation and get to his spots against real playoff defense and can score the basketball. If that happens to be a front court player, fine. I just think it needs to be a professional bucket getter. I think that's the one thing that's really missing from this team beyond Steph Curry. Hi, hey, Jason, thank you for the video. Can't wait for the season to start. How long do you think LeBron is still going to be playing? He doesn't look like the type of player who would accept to play at a lower level than what he's accustomed to. Thank you for all the knowledge you're sharing. Thank you so much for the kind words and for supporting the show. I have this weird feeling that this is LeBron's last year. I'm not basing that on anything other than just kind of like the overall attitude and energy coming from LeBron, as well as obviously some of the injury stuff about him before camp. But yeah, like I to me, it feels like at the absolute most, he plays this year and one more year. I'd be stunned if he played a 25th season. I'm with you. I don't think he wants to play at a lower level. I think he's kind of at the point where he's accomplished everything he wants to accomplish, and he's probably ready to slow down and go watch Bryce play at Arizona and go sit courtside at Laker games and watch Bronny. And I think he's just kind of getting to the point where I think that I wouldn't be surprised if this was his last season, and I'd be stunned if it wasn't in the next two seasons. Today's show is brought to you by our new presenting sponsor, Hard Rock Bet. The NBA season is right around the corner, and we're incredibly excited. Haven't placed your first bet yet? Now is the perfect time. Bet $5, and if it wins, you don't just get your payout, you also cash in $150 in bonus bets on top. If you're looking to bet NBA futures, they're live on Hard Rock Bet. You can bet on the finals, MVP, Rookie of the Year, Sixth Man, and a lot more. Open up the app to see everything that's live and lock in today's odds if you like what you see. And on Wednesdays, if you're already betting on the Hard Rock Sportsbook app, you know what that means. It's the last day to use your legendary rewards drops. Open up the app today. You can have a bonus bet, or who knows what's in there. More drops every Thursday. The rewards and promos are nonstop. Download the Hard Rock Bet app today and make your first deposit. What's up, Jason? Big fan since 2023. Thanks for supporting the show. What would you put as the Lakers starting five, and who do you think they will actually go with in reality? I've seen a lot of debate about this from Lakers fans. In the healthy, idealized version of the roster, I do agree with some of the guys like Pete Zayas and some of the other guys who've been advocating for Marcus Smart. I think that he represents just your traditional point of attack defender that allows you to use DeAndre Ayton in more traditional coverages. And in general, I think he's like a wheel greaser on offense, or that can play off the ball and on the ball a little bit, that can play make in the middle of the floor off of Luka, that can run inverted action with Luka. I think he's a natural fit there. But so much of that just depends on how healthy Marcus Smart is. I think continuity is big. And so if Marcus is only going to play 45, 50 games or maybe less, then I would go with Rui, because I think Rui is a guy who's going to play most of the games. And I think Rui represents at least a consistency in that starting role. Jared Vanderbilt is like a dark horse guy there, because if he gets a good chunk of the way into the season and he's hitting like 36, 37% of his corner threes, and He's guarding the ball super well, and he just looks like a monster. You could talk me into it being Vando. But to me, the decision really comes down to Mark or Rui, and that's going to come down to which one of them is is like if Marcus Smart is going to be healthy, I think it should be Marcus Smart. But if Marcus Smart is going to be dealing with Achilles tendinosis and in and out of the lineup and playing one game and sitting a game and then playing a game and then sitting a game, I think that that could be more detrimental to the continuity of the team if your starting lineup is changing from game to game. So like if that's the case, I think Rui makes the most sense. You continue with the switching scheme that JJ's been running. Rui obviously is a wonderful offensive fit off the ball alongside Luka. It's complicated. Ideally, you'd have a real player in that spot, like a real traditional starting caliber three. That's why I've been so high on Andrew Wiggins as a fit with the Lakers. But given their current circumstances, if Marcus is going to be banged up and Vando is still a question mark at the small as a like an off-ball scorer, I think I would go with Rui as the starting three. Will a Trae Young offense make some noise in the playoffs? The last time Trae had success in the playoffs was in 2021 when the teams he played against had centers who played either hedge, drop, or blitz. Trae Young is a genius player when it comes to beat those defenses. However, he struggles to beat defenses such as how we saw against Miami in 2022. Since now in 2025, it's more common to see switching defenses. Will Trae Young's heliocentric type of offense have some success or struggle like it has been recently, even though the team got better? Trae was 0.86 points per possession in isolation in 2024, I think. By the way, Jason, love your show. Help me understand basketball in a whole different way. You and Kenny Beecham, Thinking Basketball, Coach Nick from B-Ball Breakdown, just help me understand a lot about the NBA basketball and help me know how little I know about basketball compared to you guys. Cheers for the vids that you put out. Thanks so much for supporting the show and for the kind words. So, to be clear, I'm a big believer in Atlanta's roster construction as a regular season wins machine. And as I've said before, like if they're healthy and they win a lot of games, that's an important part of like a validation for the way that I see the game. It's something that I'm keeping an eye on just because of all of the types of versatile perimeter talent that they have off of Trae Young's advantage creation, which is something that I believe in. That said, do I think they're going to make noise in the playoffs? No. I do not view Atlanta as like a team that I think is going to win the Eastern Conference. That switching weakness, which is something we've talked about on this show, allegedly or in theory, Porzingis helps address. But he has had health issues over the years. He's a guy, too, that, like, I mean, if you had to lean on him in the post a bunch of times over the course of a playoff series, I'm not sure that's a great option. You know, I like Jalen Johnson as a talent, but I'm not sure he's ready to be some sort of massive switch beater. I like this Atlanta Hawks roster. I think they're going to chew up and spit some teams out in the regular season and rack up some wins, but I don't view them as like a real substantial playoff threat. Jason, when you're giving your take on the Atlantic Division, you said Cleveland as the only competition to the Knicks. I believe if everything works out really well for Atlanta and they are healthy, they really match up well with the Knicks, but at the same time, Cleveland matches up well with Atlanta and not the Knicks. What's your take on this? I would view Cleveland and New York both as substantial favorites over Atlanta. Again, when you get into a series, there's this like kind of order of operations as you determine what works and what doesn't. I'm sure that Cleveland, by the way, likes to switch with their bigs. So that's going to be something that gives Atlanta issues right away. Okay, Atlanta goes about really hunting Karl Anthony Towns. And New York refuses to switch. And they run hedges and high drop and stuff with Cat. And they have some success there. That's fine. New York has way more options and way more methods with which to attack Atlanta on the other end of the floor than Atlanta does to attack New York. Again, I view Atlanta as a regular season wins machine, but I don't view them on the same tier as a playoff team as either New York or Cleveland. What's your take on Jabari Smith Jr.'s role with the Rockets? They extended him at $20 million, but is he really a part of their future? Will he be traded at some point? What's his ceiling? He's an intriguing young player, but I don't see how he fits into the Rockets' plans. Thanks. Love the show. Thank you for the kind words and for the support. So here's the thing. I talked about this a little bit in the show on Monday, but even though Jabari Smith is a little bit clunky, he's a redundant four, right? It's a very similar problem to what Rui Hachimura and LeBron present for the Lakers, where they're clearly two of the top five players on the team. They clearly both need to be on the floor a lot, but they both play the same position. That is a similar problem with Jabari Smith and Kevin Durant. They both are clearly in the top five. They both clearly need to play, but Jabari's a four, Kevin Durant's a four. The reason that what makes it work for Houston and the reason why I like him with the starters is he can shoot the basketball. He can knock down, catch, and shoot threes. And this is a Houston team that desperately needs shooting, especially considering you're going to have in most lineups Şengün and Amen Thompson on the floor together. It's going to lead to a lot of teams packing the paint with rim protection. And so it's going to be very important for guys like Reed Shepherd to hit, catch, and shoot shots, Jabari Smith Jr. to hit, catch, and shoot shots, obviously Kevin Durant to have to score over the top quite a bit against these higher level defenses around the league. So, like, in a weird way, even though he's redundant, his ability to shoot I view as very valuable in the current iteration of the Rockets and the starting lineup. Now, gets tricky, right? Jabari Smith, Kevin Durant, Şengün, that's not the fastest 3-4-5 in the league in terms of foot speed, right? It's probably going to be a team that's going to have to do a little bit more switching than you would think, especially in actions that directly involve the 3, 4, and 5, right? But I just, overall, I think he just checks too many boxes for what they need out of that starting lineup. As far as the big picture, like what's his ceiling, so much of that is going to come down to what he can do as an on-ball scorer. I've seen growth for him as a ball handler over the years, but there's a fine line between I can do it and like I can do it at high volume at an NBA level. And I think he's got a long way to go to get there. When he's at his best, he's attacking mismatches as a switch beater in the like low to high post with quick aggressive moves, and he's shown some real potential there. But it's very matchup dependent, and he can struggle sometimes when he gets swarmed, right? So like whether or not he becomes that type of player in the big picture, we'll see. But like in the short term, he's just a shooter that has some utility as a big athlete on the front line. And with that being the case, there's a lot of value there, even at $20 million in the modern NBA. So I'm pretty high on Jabari right now with the Rockets because of how much they need his shooting. How would you rank the second tier of contenders? For example, the Lakers, Warriors, Wolves, Clippers, Rockets, and Knicks. For those of you guys who haven't seen this yet, we released on Wednesday a contender ranking. So go to the YouTube channel feed, go to our full episodes. You can see full contender rankings there. I did kind of tweak that a little bit to account for some of the differences between the conferences. So, for instance, Cleveland was all the way up at number 3, even though I don't necessarily think they're the third best team in the league. 3 more questions. Do you ever struggle with following your head versus your heart when you're predicting matchups? As a huge Steph fan, I will always pick him to win any series because if I bet against him and he wins, I'll feel awful. This bias means I can never cover the game with any authentic way that the way that you do. I was wondering if you were affected by these biases like mine and how you deal with that while covering the game. Love the show. So I think it's complicated because there have been times where I've followed my heart and I was right. And then there have been times that I've followed my heart and I was wrong. There have also been times when I overthought things and was right, but overthought things and was wrong. So like I think it's important to kind of like weigh all of that element of your personality. First of all, like I don't sit up here and profess to be basketball Nostradamus. Like I've picked playoff series as wrong before. I've been right about things. I've been wrong about things. The basketball is more art than science. If it was super easy to calculate and predict, then we'd all be betting on the game and making millions of dollars. That's not how it works. Like sports is inherently unpredictable, right? If anything, like this show is more about just understanding what we're seeing, right? It's about like how much we love the game and just digging into why teams are successful, why they fail, trying to use that to inform the future to the best of our ability. But the truth of the matter is none of us can just sit here and predict everything that happens in the game, right? I have a a very analytical approach to the way that I evaluate teams, but I also have deeply held basketball beliefs that will sometimes override data that I see. And all you can do is like consider both sides and then land on one, right? Like, here's what my research is showing. Here's what my heart tells me as a person who's been loving the game of basketball for decades. You know, how does that all kind of come together for an opinion? And in many cases on the show, I just try to share both. Here's what my research is showing. Here's what my gut is telling me about this team. But like, I think it's all part of the way that we cover the game of basketball, right? Like, my big thing, and one of the things that I hope you guys have picked up over the years is like, I'm always going to give you my 100% authentic opinion. Like, if I'm a fan, I'm going to be a fan. If I'm not a fan, I'm not going to be a fan. Regardless of whether or not I'm a fan, I'm going to try to give unbiased opinion as best I can. Like, okay, I really don't like this player, but here are the things he's obviously great at. Okay, I love this player, LeBron, but here are the things that he does that drive me absolutely crazy, right? Like, or here are the things that he's bad at right now. Like, I think that's really what I try to do with this show is just authentically give you guys my opinion while also trying to make sure that I at least am expressing what the alternative opinion is or whatever doesn't line up with how I actually feel. For a player like Josh Giddey, who you think is not good enough as a primary creator, would you like them as a secondary guy next to Jokic or Giannis, or is that still too big of a role as a lead perimeter player? So it's not so much about the role as it is about the salary slot. So I'd love to have Josh Giddey as a secondary creator for any team. I mean, like we've seen this before, whether it's Peyton Pritchard with the Celtics or Ty Jerome with the Cavs before the playoffs, or like when you have a guy that can like come in and run the offense for spurts, it's a huge value to any basketball team. I'm not saying that Josh Giddey isn't good enough to play a serious role in a championship team. He certainly is. The question is, does he do enough in the context of not being the primary creator to justify the salary? Like when you're now making $25 million a year, and when you're taking up that big of a slot, you had better have utility that extends into your best lineups, right? So if you're not the primary creator and you're also in the best lineups, you have to be great at other things. So, like, for instance, if Josh Giddey becomes like a 40 to 45% spot up shooter, and he shot the ball really well last year, but if he becomes a deadly spot up shooter where his off ball, like playmaking and connectivity and second side action, suddenly carries a lot of value and is a very useful, like, defensive player that can cover in multiple schemes and defensive rebound at a high level, that's where it becomes a guy where it's like, okay, 25 million, that's fine. But like what you end up asking yourself is like, if I already have a Jokic or a Giannis, would I be better served with a $25 million player who's like a Jaden McDaniels type, who's going to be like awesome at these like details, but needs to be set up on offense by guys like Jokic or Giannis? Is that a more useful application of that salary slot than necessarily using it on a guy who has some redundancies with my shot creators, right? I've been thinking about this with Austin Reeves in the context of the both the short term and the long term with the Lakers, right? So like with Austin, when he was alongside LeBron and Anthony Davis, it was like, oh my God, he's just like a perfect fit because LeBron obviously needs additional ball handling. There's the post LeBron era where it's going to be Austin and AD, and like he's obviously your ball handler. But then I look at it in the context of Luka, and I go, okay, in the short term, he's a tertiary ball handler, right? Like, so let's say LeBron comes back next year, and Austin re-ups for like 35 million a year. Like, if LeBron's on the team next year and Austin's making 35 million in the context of Luka, that's not a very good use of a $35 million salary slot. So then the question becomes, okay, let's say LeBron retires. Is Austin occupying $35 million? Is that enough of an athlete alongside Luka? Yes, he's a shot creator, but is he the athlete that you need in that spot? And that's going to be a big thing I'm looking at this year. Austin worked a ton this summer on his body. So like if I see a lot out of Austin as like an athlete this year, then I'll feel better about him in the big picture with Luka. But like everything is in the context of your salary slot on your team. And the tricky thing with guys like Josh Giddey is he's absolutely worth 25 million as like a shot creator in the purest sense of the word. But if you're building a championship roster, if he's your primary, he's just going to be the worst primary in every playoff series that he plays in, right? And if you move him into a secondary role, all of a sudden he's occupying a large salary slot while also being redundant with your top tier star. And so that's what gets tricky with guys like that. He's just kind of in a weird spot. I'm not surprised that you see teams like Cleveland move on from guys like Ty Jerome because it's like, yeah, it's a luxury to have this guy, but we can't afford to be tying up massive salary with a guy who really can't be in our best lineups. Last question. Hey, Jason, during Media Day, JB Bickerstaff said the Pistons will double down on pushing the pace slash scoring off of turnovers to generate easy offense, a formula that should work even better with a healthy Ivy and a SAR. While this will make us a great league pass team, what killed us in the playoffs was our atrocious half court offense, especially when Cade didn't have the ball. History shows that these run and gun teams have a hard ceiling when it comes to the postseason, and I believe Detroit should no longer be judged on regular season wins. My question is, if you were coaching Detroit, would you instead dedicate the season to running half court offense, even if it results in a lower win total? You'd essentially be building reps slash muscle memory with a direct focus on playoff style basketball, similar to what you described with the Knicks de emphasizing Brunson. It can potentially help decide which players should stay around Cade long term, given Ivy and Duran are extension eligible. Thanks as always for your content. This is a really interesting question, and my answer is actually very simple. Um, every team that has athletes should be emphasizing pushing the pace and scoring off of turnovers. The reason why is it's a margin in the game. You should be crashing out of the corners on offense to get offensive rebounds because those are extra possessions. You should be focusing on defensive rebounding in practice to prevent your other team from getting extra possessions. You should practice taking care of the basketball so you don't give up possessions to the other team. You should be setting your defense up in a way that can force turnovers so that you can win the possession battle. Transition, every team in the NBA is like 20% more efficient in transition than they are in the half court. So you should hunt as many of those possessions as possible. Where I think I disagree with the kind of point you're trying to make is the reality is even if you push and transition a lot, you're not going to run more than like 35% of your possessions in transition in any given game. Meaning like you're still going to have every single night like a solid 50 reps of half court offense, even if you're heavily emphasizing transition attack. To me, it's all about like time and place. You push when you have the opportunity. If you push and there's no opportunity, you pull it back out and you run half court offense. Or if there is no opportunity, you walk it up the floor and you run half court offense, right? You can do both. You can pursue transition basketball as a method with which to win on the margins while also still having plenty of opportunity to work on your half court offense and to learn about those guys, like you said, to see what you need for the team long term. Very, very excited to see what the Pistons can do this year. All right, guys, that's all I have for today. As always, I sincerely appreciate you guys for supporting me and supporting the show. We'll be back next week with regular season basketball. Can you guys believe it? I'm very, very excited. I will see you guys then.